Recognizing changes in military requirements and technology, Colt has an ongoing company-sponsored program to upgrade the military pistol and to explore the overall personal defense weapon, PDW, field. During this effort, Colt has A. Examined the combat applications and requirements, B. Defined and synthesized system parameters, C. Developed practical hardware concepts, and D. Fabricated test hardware of several weapon system types. Thanks for tuning in to another video on ForgottenWeapons.com. I'm Ian McCollum, and I'm here today at the Rock Island Auction Company taking a look at some of the weapon system types that they are going to be selling in their upcoming April of 2018 firearms auction. Today, what we have is a Colt model of 1971, and it is the pistol that came out of all of that bureaucratic gobbledygook that apparently Colt wrote in a report about what it was doing. This was Colt's attempt to come up with a more modern service pistol than the 1911, and it only took them 60 years to try to do it. Now, they never did manage to actually put this out on the commercial market because they have been chronically mismanaged for a large portion of the company's history. This did end up turning into the Colt SSP, or stainless steel pistol, which did compete in 1984 for the US M9 service pistol trials. It unfortunately lost. Well, unfortunately for Colt, it's probably good for everyone who ended up carrying a US M9 pistol. Beretta ended up winning that contract. And I should be fair here, this is actually apparently a really quite good pistol. Just between Colt's management and vagaries of the market, it never ended up really seeing the light of day. So, this was developed in 1971 by Colt Engineer Robert Roy, patented in 1972, and it actually shares a lot of mechanical elements with, well, to be honest, with the Petter pistols, the French model 1935A, and then the SIG 4416s in particular, and then that developed into the SIG P210. So let me show you exactly what I mean by that. What Colt thought this pistol really brought to the table were improvements in maintenance, capacity, and safety. And presumably they were comparing it to their 1911 pattern pistols. So in terms of capacity, this was offered, or this was going to be offered in both 9mm and 45 ACP. In 45, it had a 12+1 capacity, and in 9mm it had a 14+1 capacity. I believe they were also planning to offer it in 38 Super, but that never happened. And they obviously didn't offer it in 40 Smith & Wesson because that cartridge didn't exist in the 1970s. Unfortunately, the magazine for this one is missing, but honestly, it looks really quite a lot like a Browning high-power magazine. Now, when they say safety, they're talking about the fact that this now has a double-action trigger. In fact, it's a double-action or single-action trigger, and this one has it's missing a spring in there somewhere, and it doesn't reset if you hold it horizontal. So anyway, double-action trigger, which allows it to come into service faster. You can draw and fire one-handed. These are things that Colt said were improvements over the 1911. They have a point. It also has a manual safety here on the slide, and this is one of the elements that, to me, reminds me very much of the 1935A Petter pistol, French pistol. Because what this safety does is just rotate a block into position so that the hammer can't reach the firing pin. So that's in the fire position where the firing pin is exposed, and when you drop the hammer, it will hit it. And then that is the safe position where you can now drop the hammer and it just stops right there, short of hitting the firing pin. So it's a really simple safety. That's the good side of it. The downside is it's a safety that doesn't actually do anything in the trigger mechanism. It doesn't block the firing pin from moving. Oh, maybe not the most sophisticated design. And then maintenance. And Colt's improvement in maintenance came from the fact that this pistol was entirely made out of stainless steel. So they promoted it as being far more resistant to corrosion. You didn't have to take care of it as much. Unlike a blued carbon steel pistol, this is going to be really legitimately a lot more resilient to poor treatment and harsh conditions. A few of the other features we have on here are Petter-like full-length rails on the outside. This is, again, like the French 1935A and also the SIG 44 series pistols. A lot of the rest of this is very similar to the Browning high power, so we can disassemble it by, well, check to make sure it's empty, and then pull the slide all the way back, rotate the disassembly lever here forward. There we go. Disassembly lever goes forward, and then the slide is just going to come forward. When you get to this point, you have to drop the hammer in order to let the slide off the frame. So that gives us that, and then we can pull the recoil spring out. It is not captive. We can then pull the barrel out. We have a high power like barrel ramp here instead of a swinging link. Slide is pretty typical. And then yet another element out of SIG or Petter is a unitized and removable fire control group. So there's the gun field stripped, not much to it. Honestly, well, it's very similar to the SIG and the 1935A, and because, I mean, all of the other guns in that family. So it'll have similarities to the Tokarev and the high power and many others like that. Apparently this was really a quite reasonably good pistol, and it's a shame that it never actually saw production or sale. Take a little bit of a look at some of the other elements here. There are locking lugs in the top of the slide. So one element that this doesn't do is it doesn't actually use the hood of the slide as the locking surface. It does still stick to Browning's locking lugs there. Firing pin in the back, spring-loaded, of course. There are no markings on this gun except for a single scribed serial number. That's right there, X24711. And that's just an internal Colt numbering thing. Yeah, it looks really crudely done, but that was just for accounting purposes. The fire control group here is a little bit crude, has a little bit of refining still to be done. Remember that this is a factory prototype gun. Pull forward here, pulls forward there, which is then going to release right down in here. We can take this and cock it like that. The barrel has a ramp here for unlocking instead of the swinging link from the 1911. That was a high power era update. And it also has a little bit of a bell at the muzzle. So this pistol does not have a barrel bushing. It doesn't need one because of that contour, which allows the barrel to pivot just slightly as it goes up and down during the unlocking and locking cycle. All right, and one other really cool thing that they actually experimented with, or at least offered, they looked at it enough to actually suggest it to the government, was a Salvo multi-projectile option for this. And in that, they actually had a cartridge with 3 bullets in it. And the bullets were these truncated cones with really deep hollow bases. So you could stack 3 of them together, kind of like little traffic cones, and they would fit, very economically together in a small space. And then the barrel was a little bit unusual in that the second half of the barrel, the front half of the barrel, was of a special type where it was smooth bore and it was actually tapered. So it was like a squeeze bore idea. And the purpose there was to take these conical bullets and squish them down, because as they got narrower, they would at the same time have to get longer. And when they got longer, they would push each other apart. And so you'd get a stack, you'd get bullets that came out the muzzle independently instead of as a stack of 3 still in contact, which in theory should have made it more accurate than typical multi-projectile bullets ought to be. Now, I don't think that ever went into production. I haven't seen anything more than just drawings of the system, but really interesting and cool that in the 70s they were still looking at that sort of thing, not just in rifles, but actually tinkering with it in pistols. It'd be a fascinating thing to experiment with. But it never ended up happening with this pistol. In fact, very little ended up happening with this pistol, unfortunately for a lot of people. You do have the option of having one today, though, because this particular one, this Colt experimental prototype, is coming up for sale here at Rock Island. So if you take a look at the description text below the video, you'll find a link to their catalog page for the gun. That has their picture, their descriptions, their pictures, their description, their provenance, their price estimate, everything like that. And you can participate live at the auction here in Rock Island or place a bid right through their website. Thanks for watching.